Welcome to Spinning Back Clique, where each week here at MMA Junkie, we take a quick spin through the biggest headlines in the sport. This week, we've got Matt Wells, Nolan King, and all the way from Mexico, Danny Segura is with us as well, so let's just get right into it, guys. This past weekend, the Korean Zombie picked up an impressive win over Dan Ige at UFC on ESPN 25. Now, we know that we've got Alexander Volkanovski versus Brian Ortega later this year. Zombie did say if somebody gets hurt there, he's willing to step in. Otherwise, it seems like a lot of people like the idea of Chan Sung Jung versus Max Holloway. All that said, Zombie said he thinks he's title ready right now. So lay it out there. Is Chan Sung Jung deserving of a title shot right now, or does he need another win? And if he does, who does it need to be against? Let's put 2 minutes on the clock. Matt, get it started.
Well, when we're talking about how the UFC likes to do things, I think they're going to force Chan Sung Jung in a main event slot again for his 9th consecutive one, whether it be a title shot or not. And I know that this fight week, he talked about wanting to have a 3-round fight because training for 5-round fights over and over and over again, it takes a toll on the body, right? Is he ready for a title shot right now? I would say, why not? Go ahead and do it. And, if he wants to be that alternate for this fight coming up between Volk and Brian Ortega, sure, go ahead and do it. But I don't know. I love the idea of a Max Holloway fight as well. That would just be a whole lot of fun. Both of those guys are really exciting. Fans love both of those guys. Sure, that could be a fight night main event around that same time. I just hope it's on the same time frame as that title fight, because one thing, we're lucky if we get 2 Chan Sung Jung fights a year. Last time we got that was 2019, and before that, I believe, was 2013. So whatever is going to keep him the most active, I'm on board with that. So, Nolan, what do you think about it?
Yeah, I kind of agree with you, kind of disagree with you. I think, obviously, his performance was impressive against Dan Ige, but I still think that he's kind of got to erase the nightmare that occurred against Brian Ortega, and especially where, that was not that long ago, and Ortega's fighting for the title next. You got Holloway sitting around. So, to me, as much as Yair Rodriguez might not like it, I do like him penciled in that slot against Max Holloway whenever Max comes back. Just with the way the division flows right now, another fight potentially, depending on if the UFC wants to keep Holloway versus Rodriguez for a different date, which it sounds like they do. Calvin Kattar, I know, is gearing up for a return. I spoke to his team briefly after Zombie's win. They said that would be a fight that would be something that they might be interested in. So that's another potential fight. I think featherweight, obviously, you can't go wrong no matter which direction you go. And I just think, Dan Ige is a great fighter, but I think Zombie needs one more fight to really get that title shot push where people are calling.
It's funny, Nolan. You said it. You can't go wrong no matter which way you go. I don't think anybody would argue with Zombie taking a title shot, but boy, the idea of that Holloway fight sure does seem awfully exciting. So let's put that together. Guys, at UFC on ESPN 25, we saw Nikolai Negumereanu warned multiple times by referee Mike Beltran, quite sternly, I might add, about grabbing the cage in his light heavyweight bout with Alexa Kamer. But ultimately, no points were deducted, and Nikolai walked out of there with a split decision victory. Now, had a point been taken, the final result would have been a draw, which I know no one likes draws. And of course, that would have taken a win bonus out of Nikolai's pocket, which I know nobody wants to see fighters making less money. So knowing the cost of what taking a point can do, should referees still be quick to issue deductions when you see repeatedly rules breaking over and over, or is it just too costly? Let's put 2 minutes on the clock, and let's start it off with Nolan.
Yeah, I mean, to me, there's two things that referees, I think, need to do. Obviously, 9 chances is too many. If you're asking, do they need to be quicker for that? Yes, absolutely. You can't give a fighter an infinite amount of warnings, because guess what? The warning doesn't mean anything. What are you warning? You're warning that you're going to give another warning. So to me, I think you need to also have decisiveness. So take control of the situation. If you want to give a verbal warning first and then another stern warning, that's fine. But make sure the fighter knows, hey, you can't do that because something's coming. It's not just, I'm just going to keep telling you this for the rest of time. So clearly there's an issue there. I don't know if it's a commission issue, if it's an ABC issue, if it's just referees not doing the right thing, but something needs to change. Am I crazy here, Danny? What do you think, man?
No, you're not crazy at all. I think we need to start seeing referees take more points away. Obviously, it's consequential, but that's what the rules are for. I think with a few other fouls, you can kind of issue warnings because MMA is probably the most hectic sport in combat sports. So kicks to the groin. If you throw a kick and the fighter moves, it doesn't have to be intentional, and that stuff can happen. Same thing with eye pokes, because the gloves certainly have their issues. But when it comes to fence grabbing, I mean, it's pretty obvious that you're not allowed to do that. And you're already warned in the locker room before you head into the fight. So I think any single time that there's a fence grab, there needs to be a point taken away, because it certainly can have huge impacts on the fight. What do you think, Matt?
No, absolutely. I'm 100% in agreement with you. Listen, these guys get warned in the back. They're supposed to know the rule set ahead of that even. So for the fact that these guys get multiple free warnings during the fight, you know, we joke every single fight, like, hey, everybody gets one free no matter what it is, or at least one free of every type of foul out there, because these refs just don't take points. Why? I don't understand it. Take the point away. Like, that's why the rules are there. At this point, rules are just suggestions.
It's so true. I hate the idea of draws, and the more you take away points, especially in 3-round fights, you're just begging for more draws. But as you said, it's just a suggestion if there's no penalty for it. So I agree. Got to be quicker to take points away. Well, guys, Anderson Silva shocked the boxing world on Saturday night, winning a convincing split decision victory over Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. So I wanted to ask you, with more and more MMA athletes expressing their desire to compete in a boxing ring, is Silva's success a good thing for the MMA world or not? And I ask you because if the Spider is showing that a crossover isn't necessarily an impossible assignment, which has kind of been to this point, are we going to lose key years of MMA fighters' careers while they pursue these big money matchups in boxing? Danny, you were there on ringside. Let's put 2 minutes on the clock and start it with you.
No, I don't think we need to worry about that, at least for the immediate future. I think most of the crossovers that we're seeing is usually, you know, older guys that are already towards the end of their fighting career. So it's not like we're missing out of their prime because they're going into the boxing world, right? Anderson Silva, Vitor Belfort, Van Askren, Tyron Woodley. I mean, the list goes on. And the UFC, for the most part, does a really, really good job at keeping their champions under contract. Rarely do we see a champion, you know, walk away as a champion and join, you know, a different organization or go into a different sport. So I don't think we need to worry about fighters, you know, losing key years of fighters' careers for them to, you know, go into another sport. However, maybe way down the line, if boxing continues to be very lucrative, maybe we can run into that problem. But for now, I don't think that's something we need to worry about at all. I think UFC does a pretty good job at keeping their champions locked and active and fighting in MMA within their prime. So not a big worry on this end.
Yeah, I like the idea of when it's like a major star taking their shot. You know, if the boxing match makes sense, you know, Conor and Floyd made sense. Anderson Silva, we wanted to see that earlier in his career. And, you know, after this performance, you kind of got to think back, like, what if he didn't take some of those fights at 205? Like, did we really need that James Irvin fight? Did we really need the Stephan Bonner fight? What if we snuck in the Roy Jones Jr. matchup that everybody wanted to see while he was still in his prime? Like, that would have been amazing at this point, looking back on it. But, you know, if it makes sense, do it. You know, Nolan, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think you touched on it right there. It has to be a star, because if you look at it, like if guys, you know, Tyron Woodley's going to fight Jake Paul. It's a one-off opportunity, in my opinion. I don't think Tyron Woodley's going to become a boxing star because he beats Jake Paul. Even if he was champ, if he went over there, it would have been the same way. So it needs to be somebody that is a star when it makes sense. And the UFC's done a good job of locking in these guys with long-term contracts. So I don't think it's something that we have to be concerned about at all.
Yeah, it's funny. I just think about the fights that we probably missed, you know, with Conor McGregor taking that Floyd Mayweather bout. But at the same time, I mean, the guy changed his financial future for generations to come. So, I mean, how can you hate on him for that? And as you said, what are we going to miss out on? Some Anderson Silva 205 matchups. So maybe we do give some options there. That's a great point. Well, guys, PFL wraps up the 2021 regular season on Friday night, and the high-profile free agents brought in this season have gone through quite a bumpy ride. Anthony Pettis, he'll determine his fate this weekend. Rory McDonald, he's in the playoffs, but he's kind of limped in there with a rather dubious loss. And, of course, we don't even know what the future holds for Fabricio Verdum right now after his TKO loss in May was overturned to a no contest. So I want to ask you, PFL made quite the investment in these fighters. Was it money well spent, or is this season proven a disaster for PFL? Let's put 2 minutes on the clock. Matt, get us started.
I think time will tell at the end of the day, but I think it was a smart investment, because if you're going by the star powers coming in, like, these are big names that everybody loves to watch, and then names that are already in the PFL beat these guys, that should give those other guys a rub, and thus they get a little bit of star power build as well. But time will tell to see if that actually happens. But yeah, it was a safe investment, win or lose. I mean, there's not necessarily a bad way you can go, a bad storyline you can write out of this. I mean, people win, people lose. It's part of the fight game. But yes, bring the big names, let the big names bring in a larger audience, and then hopefully the audience stays around to see those guys that beat them. Nolan?
Yeah, I totally agree. It's not a disaster. Maybe it's a worst case scenario once they had those fighters on the roster. Like, obviously, I think they want to use their star power as much as they can. kind of, bring fans along. But I also think by them fighting some of these guys that are not big name fighters, I mean, it gives those guys some relevance. If when Clay Collard beats Anthony Pettis, his stock goes up. So it brings the eyeballs in. Once the eyeballs are there, what's the long-term plan when you got some of your big stars losing? Sure, that there's not much of a long-term plan there, long-term buzz surrounding those guys. But to me, it's all about generating the eyeballs there in the first place. We saw Bellator used to do that quite a bit. They had the big name, older fighters that they drag in, and sure, at the time people kind of questioned it, but it got you familiar with some of those other guys. So it's a classic formula, and I get why PFL did it. Not a disaster by any means. Danny, what do you think?
I think initially it might look kind of rough, but if you really look at it, the results kind of speak about the brand and what they're trying to sell to MMA fighters. That look, there's no politics here. Nothing's given. If you win, you advance, and that's pretty much the case here. It doesn't matter if you're a star or not. And I agree with you guys. I think some of these wins that we weren't expecting definitely put some stock into the talent that they already have. And look, Anthony Pettis is great. Fabricio Werdum is great. But those fighters have been around for quite some time. So I don't know how long they're going to stay in the game. So it's better that, the stock goes up from some of their talents that appear to have way more longevity in the game. So all in all, I think it's good.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm sure they wanted those big names to do as good as possible. I mean, obviously, those are the recognizable names that we'll tune in for. But for all the reasons you said, I think sometimes those losses can pay better dividends down the road than you even realize. So Saturday afternoon, guys, it's UFC Fight Night 190. Cyril Gane and Alexander Volkov meet in a key heavyweight clash. Now, what's interesting is the title contenders are stacking up pretty quick in the UFC's heavyweight division. So I don't think that this one necessarily has any immediate impact in the title picture, but Volkov has been struggling to break into the division's elite, even though he's hanging around quite a bit. While Gane seems to be the future, but he probably wants to be the present right now as well. So who has more on the line in this fight? Let's put 2 minutes on the clock. Nolan, get us started.
Yeah, I think Alexander Volkov has more on the line here. I mean, we've seen this before, right? He had that build up and he lost to Derek Lewis. So to kind of go through that again, where you finally are about to take that step up, you're about to, put yourself in a position where a win will get you maybe a number one contender fight. And if you go out there and lose like he did against Blades, like he did against Lewis, if you do that a third time, I mean, people are going to grow kind of sick and tired of seeing this. They're going to kind of pencil you into that slot that, hey, this guy's just not ready to take that one fight in between, that level of talent between the title and, top 10 contendership. So to me, I think that it's definitely Volkov. Gane, if he loses, can bounce back. He's a prospect. He's a guy that really hasn't suffered those losses. So that's kind of where I'm feeling with that one. What do you think, Danny?
Yeah, I think obviously Volkov has a lot to lose here, but I think Gane, I mean, this is a key fight for him. He's built a lot of hype around his name. Obviously, seems to be a pretty complete product. He can go to the distance. He can submit you. He can knock you out. Also, physique-wise, I mean, it's what you expect and what you want from a heavyweight, right? Very imposing guy. And look, he's also has some background with the current champion. So it could set up for fun storylines down the line if he does get into a title shot opportunity. So I'm going to go with Gane just because there's so much hype around him. I think, if he loses this one, especially to Volkov, where obviously he's very good, a former Bellator champion, but, it just seems that the very best do get past him. So it kind of puts a little bit of a ceiling on Gane. So I think Gane's stock can take a big hit if he doesn't come out victorious. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's more Gane has more to lose here because he's the undefeated fighter. Volkov has losses. He's lost, last second knockouts. He's lost by getting out wrestled all over the octagon. So Gane has more to prove here, especially considering that last fight wasn't all too exciting against Rosenstrike. So he's got to go out there, get a big win, make a real statement, and prove to everyone that, yes, I am the next guy in line for that title shot, and I'm going to do it impressively.
Yeah, you guys make some great cases. I'm intrigued by this fight. When it was first announced, I thought, well, what does that really do to the title picture? Because there's so many people lining up. But, man, you talk about the futures of both guys. I think this is a big moment in both their careers. And, guys, it's a busy week, man. We got UFC in action. We got Bellator, PFL. Cage Warriors has 3 fights. Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship is back with some MMA names on the card as well. So it's a hugely, hugely busy weekend. We'll have it all covered for you at MMA Junkie. We'll talk about it all next week on Spinning Back Clique.